Welcome back, viewers. You're watching WION World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shivan Jonna.
And I'm Diksha Bisla, and on the show today, Pakistan and Afghanistan agreed to a 48-hour ceasefire on Wednesday. Now, the Foreign Ministry in Islamabad said that after dozens of troops and civilians were killed earlier in a fresh round of border skirmishes, the Taliban government in Afghanistan has ordered the army to respect the ceasefire. We're going to get you all the details on the show today. Stay tuned.
Also on World DNA, US President Donald Trump has claimed that the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi promised him that New Delhi will stop buying Russian oil. And this is months after Trump imposed punitive tariffs over the purchase. Of course, no comment from India yet. We'll get you all the details on that front as well. Let's start with the headlines.
Pakistan and Afghanistan agreed to a 48-hour ceasefire after dozens of people were killed in intense cross-border clashes that erupted on Wednesday.
Israel's defense minister warns that fighting in Gaza could resume if Hamas fails to uphold the US-backed ceasefire as the group hands over 2 more hostage bodies, saying it can't recover more without special equipment.
Well, I don't want to tell you exactly, but we are certainly looking at land now because we've got the sea very well under control. We've had a couple of days where there isn't a boat to be found.
Donald Trump says he's considering strikes targeting Venezuelan cartels on land after a series of deadly strikes at sea against alleged drug-carrying boats.
I want to see it stop, so I was not happy that India was buying oil. And he assured me today that they will not be buying oil from Russia.
Donald Trump claims Prime Minister Modi has assured him that India will stop buying oil from Russia, calling it a big step in his push to isolate Moscow over the war in Ukraine. New Delhi has not confirmed Trump's claim.
NATO and EU seek ways to boost anti-drone defense amid increasing Russian drone threats following recent incidents in Poland and Estonia.
British government releases evidence from a collapsed spy case against 2 men accused of working for China as Prime Minister Starmer faces criticism that the case was dropped to preserve China relations.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent criticizes China's rare earth export curbs, calling it China versus the world, and urges allies to unite in reducing reliance on Beijing.
U.S. judge orders President Trump to pause planned mass layoffs of federal workers during government shutdown, now in its 3rd week after White House says that it expects to fire 10,000 workers amid the deadlock over spending.
Police clash with protesters in Cameroon's Douala after opposite candidate Chiroma Bakari claims victory in election, urging President Paul Biya to concede. Election results expected by October 26th.
England avoid a shock defeat by Pakistan at the Women's World Cup. Reinforces an abandonment, rescuing the 4-time champions from Pakistan who are cruising to a win. Pakistan and Afghanistan, they have agreed to a temporary 48-hour ceasefire after airstrikes and deadly border clashes left dozens dead and injured on both sides of the border.
Well, Pakistan carried out an airstrike on the Afghan border province of Kandahar and hit the town of Spin Boldak. While Pakistani security officials claimed they targeted a Taliban brigade, Afghanistan's defense ministry spokesperson claimed that residential areas were hit.
Following the fresh skirmishes in Afghanistan's Spin Boldak, injured civilians were receiving treatment at a local hospital. Recounting the horrors of the clashes, they narrated how Pakistan shelled their homes, killing civilians.
The Pakistani mortars crossed over from their side of the border. We were close to the border when the mortars and shells came and hit people's homes. The military posts are around the border, but they sent the strikes into civilian villages. The shells landed here and caused many casualties in Spin Boldak.
All the injured have been brought in and some women were killed. About 99% of the victims are civilians, including women and children. Some have been killed, while others are still lying wounded. Their treatment is being carried out by the Department of Public Health and other organizations. Ambulances have arrived.
Now, amid the tensions at the border, at least 5 people were killed and 35 others were wounded in explosions in Kabul, said an Italian NGO Emergency, which runs a hospital in the Afghan capital before the truce with Pakistan entered into effect.
Meanwhile, in Afghanistan's Ahmedabad district, hundreds of mourners gathered for the funeral of Afghan journalist Abdul Ghafoor Abid, who was killed by Pakistani forces while covering cross-border fighting for state-run television RTA. His death sparked calls for an investigation and punishment for the perpetrators under international law.
Well, over the weekend, the Taliban had launched an offensive along parts of its southern border with Pakistan, prompting Islamabad to vow a strong response of its own. Islamabad has accused Afghanistan of harboring militant groups led by the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan or TTP on its soil, which is, of course, a claim that Kabul denies. And to discuss more, we're now being joined by Marvin Wainbaum. He's a director for Pakistan Studies at the Middle East Institute. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us on the broadcast.
My pleasure.
Right, so given how things are escalating between Afghanistan and Pakistan, do you think this ceasefire is going to hold?
Well, it's in the interest of both countries, the government in Kabul and in Islamabad, that this not proceed any further in the escalation. Neither country really can afford it, but they have gotten locked into this kind of tit for tat, and it is dangerous because it threatens really in many ways to destabilize not only these two countries and their border, but other countries as well. And we have to recognize that even China and the United States and the Gulf countries all look at this development in Afghanistan with great concern because it can have a overflow into their areas, increasing perhaps tensions that from other groups, from other insurgent groups, such as the TTP in Central Asia. I could go on and particularly point to the fact that Chinese economic interests and now increasingly U.S. economic interests really hinge on there being stability between these two countries. So there's a great deal at stake here, and I think that there will be heavy pressure to keep the ceasefire going. Now, will it last? I think that the main issue here is going to be to what extent does the Kabul government want to put the clamps on the TTP, the Tehreek-e-Taliban, the Pakistani Taliban. If they really want to clamp down on them, I think that we could see a period of some peace between the two sides that we haven't seen in quite a while. But what we have to appreciate is that to do that also has dangers for Afghanistan. Should it really hold to the fire, the TTP, this could create internal differences within Afghanistan, which could lead to divisions within the leadership, and could also bring into play here the Islamic State.
Understood. Understood.
So there's just a great deal at stake here.
Yeah, Mr. Weinbaum, also as far as you said, it's a tit for tat which is going on, these skirmishes that we're seeing, one only hopes that global players ensure that this 48-hour ceasefire, it holds, it is in the interest of both countries as well. But as of now, what are the chances of this becoming a full-blown war, going past the stage of these skirmishes? Because there was certain pressure on both countries to hold back, exercise restraint. That was ignored within a matter of a day. And now there's this 48-hour ceasefire with no confirmation of it holding.
Well, I don't believe that there would ever be a full-blown war between the two countries. Neither country can afford it. No, neither country can afford to have the kind of investment that they would have to make in that. So I don't believe that either really is thinking in those terms, but neither of them want it to be seen that somehow it gave way. There's a great deal of suspicion between the two countries, and it's been true for decades. So it has been exaggerated now by the fact that the TTP is both under the control of the Kabul government, but also has to some extent, some degree of freedom to undertake and brings the Kabul government, therefore, along in what is happening. Again, I repeat, I don't believe either country can afford a long conflict.
All right, Mr. Marvin Weinbaum, thanks so much for joining us here on World DNA and sharing all your insights. Of course, there's a 48-hour ceasefire. One hopes that it is going to hold, as both countries, as you mentioned, can't afford a long-drawn war.
All right, moving on. Israel has threatened to resume fighting if Hamas does not honor the terms of a US-backed ceasefire that halted the war in Gaza.
Now, this is after Hamas handed over the remains of 2 more deceased hostages and said that it would be unable to retrieve any more bodies from the ruins of Gaza without specialized equipment. Since Monday, under a ceasefire agreement brokered by US President Trump, Hamas has handed back 20 surviving hostages, the living ones, in exchange for nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners freed from Israeli jails.
Now, the Palestinian group is required to return all 28 dead hostages as part of the first phase of the Gaza peace plan. If the 2 bodies returned on Wednesday night are confirmed to be hostages, that would mean that 19 are still unaccounted for in Gaza. Israel said it would not compromise on hostage return, saying, "Our mission is not complete." Israel's defense minister said he had instructed the IDF to prepare a comprehensive plan to defeat Hamas in Gaza in the event of a renewal of the war.
A senior US advisor, however, said that the Palestinian group still intends to make good on its pledge. The advisor argued that Hamas had acted in good faith by returning the live hostages and was working with various interlocutors to find and return the remains of the hostages.
Still, any delay in returning the remaining bodies is likely to pile further domestic pressure on Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to tie humanitarian aid to the fate of the bodies. Israel's far-right National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir has threatened to cut off desperately needed aid supplies to Gaza if Hamas fails to return the remains of soldiers who are still held in the Palestinian territory.
Ukrainian President Zelensky is all set to meet US President Trump on Friday.
And he says that the meeting could bring an end to the ongoing war with Russia.
підготували вже.
We have already prepared our part of the homework before the meeting with President Trump, the military part and also our economic part. All the details, everything is there. The agenda of our meeting with the President of America is very meaningful, and I thank everyone who helps. This can really bring the end of the war closer. It is the United States that has the ability to have such global influence, and we are doing everything to ensure that others in the world are on the same side with us in this work.
Well, Ukraine is seeking a deal for cruise missiles, advanced air defense systems, joint drone production and Tomahawk missiles.
On the ground, fighting continues with Russian Defense Ministry claiming troops have taken control of 2 settlements in Ukraine's east.
Russia is also intensifying its strikes on Ukraine's power grid, leading to emergency blackouts across Kiev and other regions. State operator Ukrenergo has said that repair work is underway but urged civilians to conserve power.
On Wednesday, Russia warned of an intensified intelligence presence near its borders, claiming that NATO was stepping up surveillance in the region. A joint NATO-EU push is underway to counter the growing drone threat from Russia, with the EU proposing a continent-wide drone wall to secure airspace along its eastern border by 2027.
Friends, this war was never about the fate of just one nation. President Putin's aggression is not confined to Ukraine. Drone incursions into Poland, violations of Estonia's airspace, election interference in Moldova. A secure Europe needs a strong Ukraine, and security for all our nations starts in Ukraine.
NATO allies are also pledging billions more in military aid and support under a US-led weapons initiative. 10 additional NATO countries have signed on, with US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth calling on more nations to contribute.
Now, if this war does not end, if there is no path to peace in the short term, then the United States, along with our allies, will take the steps necessary to impose costs on Russia for its continued aggression. If we must take this step, the U.S. War Department stands ready to do our part in ways that only the United States can do.
Germany unveiled a military aid package for Ukraine worth €2 billion that will focus on strengthening Kiev's air defense and drone capabilities, while the UK is tightening sanctions on Russia, targeting oil giants Rosneft and Lukoil and dozens of shadow fleet tankers.
Lithuania, on the other hand, announced it will increase its defense spending next year to 5.38% of their GDP, crossing the 5% threshold, which was demanded by NATO members, by Trump, of course.
And US President Donald Trump has said that he is considering military strikes on land targets to combat the flow of drugs from Venezuelan cartels.
And the Venezuelan cartels, of course, into the United States, and this is after 5 recent maritime attacks on alleged drug smuggling boats. Well, Trump has also confirmed that CIA-led covert operations have been authorized inside Venezuela, signaling a major escalation in Washington's pressure strategy against President Nicolas Maduro.
But I authorize for 2 reasons, really. Number one, they have emptied their prisons into the United States of America. They came in through they came in through the border. They came in because we had an open border policy. And the other thing are drugs. We have a lot of drugs coming in from Venezuela. And a lot of the Venezuelan drugs come in through the sea, so you get to see that. But we're going to stop them by land also.
In response, Venezuelan President Maduro condemned what he called CIA-led coup d'etat, saying there should be no war in the Caribbean, no regime change, and no CIA-orchestrated coups. He spoke during an address to a committee formed after Washington deployed warships to the Caribbean for an anti-drug operation.
Well, at least 27 people have been killed so far in the Americas Caribbean attacks. Following the latest boat strike, military exercises were carried out along Venezuela's Atlantic Caribbean coast, with additional operations planned in states bordering Colombia. In a message on Telegram, President Nicolas Maduro said that he was mobilizing the military, police, and a civilian militia to defend Venezuela's mountains, coasts, schools, hospitals, factories, and markets.
US President accuses Nicolas Maduro of heading a drug cartel, charges he denies. And in August, Washington doubled a bounty for information leading to Maduro's capture to $50 million.
And the trade conflict between US and China is escalating yet again.
And this is with Donald Trump saying the United States is already in a trade war and threatening sweeping 100% tariffs. China has responded by tightening export controls on rare earth minerals. That is a strategic move that could disrupt global supply chains.
On October 15th, Trump told reporters that the US is already in a trade war with China and defended the use of tariffs as a tool of national security. He claimed that without tariffs, we would be exposed as being nothing and argued that tariffs are essential for defense.
Well, you're in one now. Look, we have 100% tariff. If we didn't have tariffs, we would be exposed as being a nothing. We would have no defense. You know, they've used tariffs on us, but we've never had anybody sitting in that chair that felt the need to do it. And they've allowed us to be $37 trillion in debt, et cetera, et cetera. Tariffs are a very important tool for our defense, for our national security. If we don't have tariffs, we're not going to have national security.
China, meanwhile, expanded restrictions on exports of rare earth elements and related technologies, a move with serious global implications. Under the new rules, exporting certain rare earths, magnets and processing technologies will require government licenses.
Even products containing parts or trace materials derived from Chinese rare earths may need approval. In response, Trump announced that he will impose an additional 100% tariff on Chinese goods beginning November 1st on top of the existing duties. He also said that the US may impose export control on critical software which is going to China.
Rare earths are not rare in absolute occurrence, but the smelting, refining, purification and advanced processing, these are complex and capital-intensive procedures, and these materials are essential for advanced electronics, electric vehicles, military hardware, renewable energy technologies, and a lot more. The US depends heavily on China for rare earth materials. Estimates suggest that the US sources 70% of its rare earth imports from China, and China processes over 90% of global refining capacity.
US officials, US Trade Representative Jamieson Greer and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent sharply condemned China's rare earth export curbs, calling them a global supply chain power grab and warning Beijing to back down before the world faces tighter restrictions and retaliatory tariffs ahead.
Experts warn that disruption to rare earth supply chains could ripple across many sectors: semiconductors, auto manufacturing, defense and consumer electronics. The Federal Reserve has flagged renewed US-China trade tensions as a potential drag on growth. Already, markets have reacted. Stocks in technology and supply chain sensitive sectors are under pressure.
Well, Trump is expected to meet Chinese President Xi Jinping later this month in South Korea as part of the APEC summit. But the meeting is now burdened with high stakes. If no deal is struck, the countries would be locked in a sustained trade war, as Trump himself warned. US officials say that Beijing still has room to change course to avoid deeper economic decoupling.
And the death of a South Korean student in Cambodia has taken the nation by storm.
The effect of which has been directly felt on Cambodia's tourism that draws thousands every year.
Now, Cambodia's Interior Ministry has confirmed that the South Korean student has died from cardiac arrest caused by severe torture, allegedly by 3 Chinese suspects who were arrested after being charged with murder and online fraud.
Upon identifying the deceased, it was found to be Park Min-ho, male, 22-year-old, a South Korean student who arrived in Cambodia on July 17, 2025.
Well, Seoul has now banned travel to several parts of Cambodia, including Poipet and Kampot, while dispatching a team of high-level officials to help nationals lured into working in scam compounds and secure the release of those who are held against their will.
Last Friday, South Korea's Foreign Minister Cho Hyun summoned the Cambodian ambassador in Seoul to protest the death of the student, which is being linked to an employment scam in Cambodia. Cho's ministry notes that nearly 80 South Koreans who were possible victims of fake jobs or scam centers remain unaccounted for in Cambodia.
Now, between January and August this year, over 300 South Koreans were reported to have gone missing or been held against their will after entering Cambodia. The number of kidnappings or confinement rose to 220 last year, a stark rise from just 17 in 2023. Many reportedly lured there by fraudulent job offers promising high pay.
Also concerning is the threat factor from China over economic coercion and ongoing security concerns, leading to a rise of anti-China sentiment in Seoul.
And with that, it's time for a short break on World DNA.
Don't go anywhere. Lots more on the other side when we come back. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has said that while the country applauds Israel-Hamas peace deal, it won't change anything about South Africa's case in the International Court of Justice. We'll bring you the details of this and a lot more lined up for you after this short break when World DNA returns. Come right back.
Over. Okay, you understand that?
This is the historic dawn of a new Middle East.
The best day of my life.
Donald Trump is the greatest friend that the state of Israel has ever had in the White House. Mr. President, you are committed to this peace. I am committed to this peace for their great contribution to this effort.
Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. To some, it's an extreme ideology. To others, it's the very soul of India. To some, it's rebellion. To others, it's a principle of nation building, coming soon to challenge perceptions in RSS centenary year, Kesariya at 100.
Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes. And millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Prime Crime is your front row seat to darkness.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. To some, it's an extreme ideology. To others, it's the very soul of India. To some, it's rebellion. To others, it's a principle of nation building, coming soon to challenge perceptions in RSS centenary year, Kesariya at 100.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching World DNA with Deeksha. I'm Shivan. Lots more to discuss. Let's start with the headlines.
Taiwan spots 23 Chinese military aircraft, 8 naval vessels and 2 official ships operating around the island. 21 aircraft across the median line and enter Taiwan's air defense identification zone.
NATO and EU seek ways to boost anti-drone defenses amid increasing Russian drone threats. The alliance is testing integrated systems to detect and neutralize aerial threats on its eastern flank.
I want to see it stop. So I was not happy that India was buying oil. And he assured me today that they will not be buying oil from Russia.
Donald Trump claims Prime Minister Modi has assured him that India will stop buying oil from Russia, calling it a big step in his push to isolate Moscow over the war in Ukraine. New Delhi has not confirmed Trump's claim.
Pakistan-Afghanistan agreed to a 48-hour ceasefire after dozens of people were killed in intense cross-border clashes that erupted on Wednesday.
Israel's defense minister warns that fighting in Gaza could resume if Hamas fails to uphold the U.S.-backed ceasefire as the group hands over 2 more hostage bodies, saying it can't recover more without special equipment.
Treasury Secretary of the U.S. Scott Bessent criticizes China's rare earth export curbs, calling it China versus the world, and urges allies to unite in reducing reliance on Beijing.
Donald Trump will travel to Japan later this month before he attends the annual Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in South Korea. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent without giving specific dates for the trip.
Police clash with protesters in Cameroon's Douala after opposition candidate Bakari claims victory in election, urging President Paul Biya to concede. Election results expected by the 26th of October.
Defending champion Yannick Sinner puts away Stefanos Tsitsipas to help to set up semi-final clash against Novak Djokovic in 6 Kings Slam. Taylor Fritz also advances with a win over Alexander Zverev.
Taylor too good for Sasha, and he'll have another tilt at Carlos.
U.S. President Donald Trump has claimed that Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has promised him that New Delhi will stop buying Russian oil.
And he's described it as a big move in Washington's campaign to isolate Moscow over the war in Ukraine. No comment from India on this statement yet. Addressing reporters at the White House, Trump said that he was not happy with India importing oil from Russia, which Washington views as indirectly financing the conflict in Ukraine. He added that Prime Minister Modi has given him assurances that India will halt its Russian oil purchases.
But it's a war that Russia should have won in the first week, and they're going into the 4th year. And I want to see it stop. So I was not happy that India was buying oil. And he assured me today that they will not be buying oil from Russia. That's a big stop. They will, within a short period of time, they will not be buying oil from Russia. And they'll go back to Russia after the war is over.
Well, Trump emphasized that India's move to stop buying Russian oil would help end the conflict in Ukraine, adding that New Delhi's normal trade relations with Moscow could resume once the war is over.
India has not confirmed Trump's claim. India has consistently justified its purchases of Russian oil, citing the need to ensure energy security for its own population and maintain economic stability on the global stage. Trump, in August, raised tariffs on Indian exports to the United States to 50%, with Trump's aides accusing India of fueling Russia's war in Ukraine.
Now, in his White House remarks, Trump praised his relationship with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, calling him a great leader who supports him. He described India as an incredible country, noting that Modi has remained in power for a long time. The development comes ahead of a possible meeting between Trump and Prime Minister Modi at a summit of Southeast Asian countries in Malaysia this month. Now, responding to a reporter's question, Trump said that he is looking forward to meeting him in Malaysia.
In light of China's export curbs on rare earths, do you view India as a reliable partner going forward? And are you planning to meet Prime Minister Modi in Malaysia? Are you open to talks in terms of trade?
Sure. He's a friend of mine. We have a great relationship. He just said that 2 days ago, as you know. We have a great relationship. No.
The announcement follows a recent meeting between Trump's new nominee for Indian ambassador, Sergio Gore, and Prime Minister Modi. Gore's appointment, given his close ties to Trump, was interpreted as a reaffirmation of steady and friendly U.S.-India relations.
And for more on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani has sent us this report from New York. Listen in.
President Trump making headlines by saying that Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has personally assured him that India will stop buying Russian oil, a move that, if confirmed, could mark a major shift in global energy politics. Trump told reporters on Wednesday that Modi promised to end the purchase within a short period of time. The decision, Trump says, would strengthen his pressure campaign against Moscow to end the war in Ukraine, a conflict approaching its fourth year. India is the world's second largest buyer of Russian oil after China. Trump has recently expressed frustration with Vladimir Putin of Russia, calling him the main obstacle to peace. And he is set to meet Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the White House on Friday. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.
And the mystery surrounding the death of 2 Haryana police officers is getting murkier by the day.
In a significant development in the ongoing investigation of IPS officer Vaipuran Kumar's suicide case, a Chandigarh court has issued a directive to his wife, IAS officer Amneet P. Kumar.
The court has asked Amneet Kumar to file a reply regarding the identification of her late husband's body for post-mortem examination on the 15th of October. The wife says she has given consent to conduct the post-mortem. The directive follows an application filed by the DSP and member of the Special Investigation Team who sought the court's permission to proceed with the identification of the deceased IPS officer's body.
Now, the Chandigarh police has also moved to secure the laptop of the IPS officer. The SIT formed by the Chandigarh police continues to probe the circumstances surrounding the tragic death of IPS Vaipuran Kumar, who allegedly died by suicide at his official residence on October 7th.
The death of the IPS officer who accused his seniors of harassment and caste discrimination took a new twist this week after an assistant sub-inspector, Sandeep Lathar, allegedly shot himself and blamed the former of corruption.
Meanwhile, turmoil continues to grip Madagascar. President is out and military has taken the control of the country.
And now African Union has announced to suspend Madagascar with immediate effect. The decision comes after the army took control of the country. Madagascar's new military ruler is set to be sworn in as president, and he has dissolved all institutions except the lower house of parliament or National Assembly.
We will be sworn in soon. I don't know who is valid and who is not.
Well, suspension from the 55-member African Union is a huge setback for Madagascar. The move will leave the island nation isolated diplomatically and opens the way for political and diplomatic sanctions. The primary goal of a suspension is to pressure the unconstitutional regime to restore democratic order in the country.
Madagascar's High Constitutional Court has called for fresh elections As per the order, elections must take place within the next 60 days. The military leader has vowed to uphold the order and abide by the law.
We took responsibility yesterday when we made that declaration. Afterwards, the High Constitutional Court issued its own statement calling for elections within 60 days. Once the HCC made its decision, we are people of the law. We follow what is legal. What the HCC did is lawful. It's true that it doesn't correspond to what we wanted to do or to what Gen Z expected, but that's the law, and we will all abide by it.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has said that while the country applauds the U.S. brokered Israel-Hamas ceasefire, it will not change anything about South Africa's case in the International Court of Justice against Israel.
Now, the court is seized with determining whether Israel committed genocide in Gaza in retaliation for Hamas taking more than 250 people hostage from Israel 2 years ago.
Answering questions in the National Council of Provinces, the South African president said the country would continue to advocate for Palestinians and the deal has nothing to do with South Africa's case in the Hague court. Ramaphosa said that despite the ceasefire, Israel still has to answer for the atrocities committed in Gaza.
After the court granted it an extension in April, Israel is now due to deliver its counter-memorial containing its response to South Africa's main arguments in January.
After concluding the first phase of the hostage swap on Monday, in which 20 living Israeli hostages were released by Hamas in exchange for nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners, Trump appealed for a phase 2 of the ongoing negotiations between Israel and Gaza.
The U.S. president said the job is not done and that the dead have not been returned as promised. As of now, major uncertainties remain as key issues, including when Hamas will return the bodies of all hostages believed dead and Israel's demand that a weakened Hamas disarm.
And there's more on this from Calden Ongmu, our correspondent, who sent us this report from Johannesburg. Listen in.
South Africa has welcomed the recent Gaza ceasefire, but it has made itself absolutely clear that the ceasefire will not affect Pretoria's genocide case against Israel at the ICJ. This statement by President Cyril Ramaphosa has once again showed Pretoria's loyalty with Palestine despite threats from the U.S. previously. Some South Africans fear that Pretoria's continuous support and solidarity with the Palestinians will cost the country a lot. The diplomatic relationship between the United States and South Africa is at its most turbulent phase since the end of apartheid. Some are worried that Ramaphosa's statement made on Tuesday may backfire him once again, as Pretoria is in talks with U.S. Trade Representative to reach a deal to roll back steep U.S. tariffs. This is Calden Ongmu from Johannesburg, South Africa for WION World is One.
And London's elite are packing their bags.
The exodus is sending shockwaves through the city, hitting luxury stores, high-end salons, private clubs and even local jobs. This next report explores how London is feeling the pinch as its richest residents reconsider their future in the UK.
London's wealthy are leaving the capital in record numbers, citing rising taxes and changes to private school and inheritance rules. Salons, private clubs and luxury stores report a noticeable drop in high-paying clients as millionaires relocate to cities like Dubai, Monaco and Switzerland. Experts warn the exodus is concentrated in London, a hotspot for non-domiciled residents, and say the ripple effects are already being felt across local businesses and services. High-end lifestyle sectors are taking a hit. Plush salons report fewer appointments, luxury stores see lower spending, and exclusive clubs are losing top members. Wealthy families are reconsidering the UK as a long-term base, exploring schooling and relocation options abroad. Concierge services report rising demand for advice on moving overseas, reflecting the growing uncertainty among London's elite. The departure of millionaires is impacting more than just spending. Job losses for domestic staff, lower orders for suppliers, and shrinking demand for luxury goods signal a wider economic effect. Store vacancy rates have risen while affluent boroughs report hundreds of business closures. Experts warn the indirect cost of London's wealth exodus could be significant and long-lasting. Business Bureau, WION, World is One.
Apple CEO Tim Cook has pledged to increase the tech giant's investment in China.
And this as the company balances escalating trade tensions between the US and China.
Now, according to a Reuters report, the Apple CEO made the commitment during a meeting in Beijing with China's industry minister Li Lesheng. Cook reportedly confirmed that Apple will continue investing in China, and the Chinese summary of their meeting did not reveal how much Apple plans to actually invest, but it stressed that the company remains a key partner in China's tech sector.
Now, many US companies have been reassessing their ties with China as the two biggest economies clash over tariffs and as US President Donald Trump pushes to shift manufacturing back home. But so far, Apple has avoided the direct impact of the trade war that has hit tech rivals like Nvidia and Qualcomm. Now, while Chinese firms such as Huawei continue to face sanctions from the United States.
Despite a sluggish smartphone market in China, Apple's shipments rose 0.6% year-on-year in the third quarter, reaching 10.8 million units. According to data from research firm IDC, the growth was driven by strong demand for the new iPhone 17 series, making Apple the only one among China's top 3 vendors to see a rise in shipments. China's ambassador to the US, Xi Feng, praised Apple's continued engagement, calling the business community a stabilizer of US-China relations and a promoter of pragmatic cooperation.
Elephants are vanishing fast in India. A new consensus using DNA is alarming.
The survey, first of its kind, shows a 25% drop in just 8 years. This next story explains how the numbers tell a concerning story about India's wildlife.
Roaring trunks shake the earth. The forest holds its breath. Behind the veil of green, a silent decline grips India's giants. In India, the first nationwide DNA-based census reveals a shocking truth, a 25% drop in the past 8 years. In 2017, India's wild elephant count stood at 29,964. Today, the survey pegs it at just 22,446. The distance between these figures is life and death for entire herds. However, scientists caution the two figures are not directly comparable because advanced genetic methods, not visual counts, were used this time around. During the survey conducted by India's Ministry of Environment, researchers collected over 21,000 dung samples across elephant habitats covering 6.7 lakh kilometers of forest trails. The Western Ghats remain India's largest elephant stronghold, with about 12,000 elephants, followed by northeastern hills harboring over 6,500 elephants. Globally, the situation is also dire. There are roughly 450,000 elephants left on Earth, African and Asian combined. Ancient elephants numbers only 40,000 to 50,000 of that total, and India remains their key stronghold. While poaching has declined, habitat fragmentation emerges as the primary threat. Expanding human settlements, agricultural development, industrial growth, mining operations, and infrastructure projects continually shrink elephant corridors. The findings underscore urgent conservation needs whilst demonstrating India's commitment to scientific wildlife management through advanced monitoring techniques. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
And India is set to host the 2030 Commonwealth Games.
The The Executive Board of Commonwealth Sport has recommended Ahmedabad as the host city, with a final decision to be taken on the 26th of November. Ahmedabad has been chosen ahead of the Nigerian capital of Abuja by an evaluation commission of the governing body of Commonwealth Sport. The decision to hold the games at Ahmedabad is now expected to be ratified at the organization's General Assembly in Glasgow on 26th of November, as I mentioned earlier, and the approval is going to be a formality. India's Home Minister Amit Shah hailed the decision. He said, and I quote, "A day of immense pride and joy in India. Heartfelt congratulations to every citizen of India on Commonwealth Association's approval of India's bid to host the Commonwealth Games 2030 in Ahmedabad. It is a grand endorsement of Prime Minister Modi's relentless efforts to place India on the world sports map."
Now, India last hosted the Commonwealth Games in 2010. However, the Delhi Games were overshadowed by poor planning and allegations of corruption. Ahmedabad boasts the Narendra Modi Stadium, which is the largest in the world with a capacity of 132,000. The Indian government also sees the 2030 Commonwealth Games as a major step towards proving that India is capable of hosting a large-scale sporting event. The ultimate goal for India is to host the Olympics in 2036, and the Indian bid for the Olympics is also set to put forward Ahmedabad as the host city.
The cast of Ballads of a Small Player enjoyed a hearty premiere in Los Angeles.
Colin Farrell, Edward Berger were some of the A-listers who attended the event. Find out more about the event in our next report.
I mean, it's not lost on me how magic it still feels to walk onto a film set and see production designers bring these worlds alive and work with props masters and props departments who are bringing in all these tchotchkes and details that help create the world and build the world. It's not lost on me, but at the same time, I've been doing it a while now. Not complacency, but it's my job.
I really believe in it. I really believe in second chances. I really believe in coming around. I really believe in when there's a low point, you can get over it, you can come back, can come back up, and that's kind of what the movie is about.
That's a wrap on this edition of World DNA. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll be taking a short break, and before that, here's a look at all the climate stories making headlines across the world. Stay with us. This is Beyond World is One.
India's Global Voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. To some, it's an extreme ideology. To others, it's the very soul of India. To some, it's rebellion. To others, it's a principle of nation building. Coming soon to challenge perceptions in RSS centenary year, Kesariya at 100.
Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes. And millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Prime Crime is your front row seat to darkness.
War is over, okay? You understand that?
This is the historic dawn of a new Middle East.
The best day of my life.
Donald Trump is the greatest friend that the state of Israel has ever had in the White House. Mr. President, you are committed to this peace. I am committed to this peace for their great contribution to this effort.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency.